Now, our next two guests are voices deeply involved in road safety here in Clare. We're joined by Helga Himmelsbach, a North Clare resident and, of course, widow, who's campaigned tirelessly for safer roads following the tragic death of her husband Jerry in 2023. And we're also joined by Andy Lambert from Kilfenora, who's with the Clare Public Participation Network on the Tourism Development SPC. And we're going to be discussing the concerning rise in road fatalities across Ireland last year and the challenges facing vulnerable road users and what needs to be done to make our roads safer. And a very good morning to you, Helga and Andy. Helga, can you share with listeners or just remind them how your personal experience has shaped your view on road safety? Had you always a particular view on it, and that what happened to Jerry only reinforced the need for change?
Yes, Alan, and thank you so much for giving us the time and the space to talk about this here this morning, because as you know, has been highlighted, the numbers in Ireland and in Clare are going up in road deaths counter to other European countries. So I think it's really high time that this will be tackled. And Jerry and myself always had an interest in road safety. We just didn't really know how we could bring ourselves in. You know, we were avid cyclists. We like to hike. I used to ride my horse out onto the roads, and we could see the dangers that were just mounting. And then before we could really become more proactive, Jerry was taken in 2023, as you pointed out. And, you know, that's over 2 years ago now, and I cannot see that any efforts have been made to bring in constructive change on the stretch of road where Jerry was killed, nor anywhere else. So even the numbers here in Clare are going up, unfortunately, on road deaths. Last year we had 4 people killed, 3 of them vulnerable road users. And all that is compelling me to kind of keep campaigning. That's why I got in touch with Sean Kenny, and he was kind enough to meet me in Ennis last summer, and he promised me to be the mediator between the North Clare and all Clare communities and the authorities to see that works will progress. And I really hope that he will step in that capacity that he promised me, and I'm in constant exchange with his office. And really hope that something will come out of that, because really we need to see a willingness for constructive change and then the change to follow swiftly, so that the same dilemma that happened to Jerry and so many other people now here in Clare alone will not repeat itself, because these are very practical measures that we are asking for. You know, the N67 in Ballyvaughan still has to give right-of-way to a minor road. That doesn't make sense at all from whatever angle you're coming in. Many Clare communities have been campaigning for the raised pedestrian crossing. They are not there. We have been campaigning, and I know I was on the program last year, to have signs erected to remind foreign drivers on which side to drive on. They have not been put up. And there's many, many, many small changes that, when they're taken in together, would have really a large impact from how we are seeing it, and that is what Clare has been campaigning for, and there hasn't been a breakthrough yet. And
I mean, and just to bring you in, Andy, I mean, to hear that small changes which could make a huge difference and potentially save lives haven't been made. As Helga said, she has been in contact with Minister Kenny, and hopefully something productive will emerge from that, but had seen very little progress over the past 2 years, which could surely only compound the sense of hurt and loss since Jerry's passing. But added to that is the fact that last year we saw 190 people lose their lives on Irish roads, and that was up by 14 rather from the previous year, 2024. And it also, the data shows a worrying rise in deaths among vulnerable road users, be it pedestrian cyclists and motorcyclists. What's your take on the latest data, the way the numbers are going, and why those groups in particular are so at risk, and what measures could help?
Well, I think we at the Clare PPN at the AGM in December, we discussed road safety and decided to make it a priority for this year. And in support of that, did a basic comparison with surrounding counties. and also had some useful input from the Irish Cycling Campaign. Now, very swiftly, we identified the fact that there is no road safety officer for Clare. Technically, there is one, but it doesn't really exist. There's no road safety committee. Other counties have road safety committees with community participation, Gardaí, etc. And these committees and road safety officer are crucial for driver education. And there's undoubtedly an issue in County Clare and elsewhere with the standard of driving at the moment. There's lots of evidence about that. But not a lot of data collection, because basically we've got an official, in terms of the institutions, we've got a bit of a black hole. Now the counties will have discernible commitment to Vision Zero Ireland, which is, this is an international standard, but Vision Zero is to try and get accidents down to a minimal rate as soon as possible. In Ireland's case, the national policy is 235. 230, and the UK have just adopted one which is adopting a target of 235, just by way of example. So in Clare, 18 months ago, a road safety group was announced, but you'd have to hunt very hard to find evidence of this. And it just comprised 3 councillors. There were no community reps, Gardaí or whatever. And then we identified that actually that's never been convened, because the officials have to convene it. The 3 councillors can't do anything. So despite all the issues going on, even this little grouping that was put together hasn't actually met. Now, other council statements, you mentioned cycling and walking, other council statements focused on creating a safer environment for walkers and cyclists. We have no coherent approach in Clare. Lonely Planet in 2009 said Clare was one of the top 10 global destinations for cycling tourism. Now, by common consent, it's one of the most dangerous places. And we've challenged the council in the Tourism SPC to address this into policy terms, and we're still waiting for some coherent answer. The Irish Cycling Campaign has also fleshed out the fact that Google is the only county around that has not ensured that Google Maps algorithm shows the correct speed on local roads, which went legally down to 60 from 80 in February. But if you actually look on a phone or on an in-car system, it'll still be telling you 80 on Clare roads. Now, that's not legal. If the Gardaí stop you for speeding, you'll be fined or worse. But what it is doing is it's telling people, the algorithm is telling people, you keep using these local roads. And as we know, whether it's from the cliffs or down at Kilfenora, we've got people just using back roads when they should be using the regional roads and clogging things up and driving in environments which in many cases tourists are very unfamiliar with. Yeah. They don't understand single track roads and it's clogging up the roads.
Yeah, just what you're saying there about cycling, Andy, you would be hopeful that we rely on tourism so much in Clare and particularly out west as well, that making it safer for cyclists has got to be, if only from a protect tourism perspective, that something will be done there.
Absolutely. Well, as I said, we challenged in the last meeting we had at the SPC to put forward papers on, firstly, car-free tourism, because there's no policy, it's not included in the Clare tourism strategy, and specifically on walking and cycling, where what Clare offers and what's institutionally offered, on the Visit Clare website, it does compare extremely poorly with other counties. So hopefully there will be a review of the Clare tourism strategy, and eventually we'll get something happening. But the initial response was poor. Okay. Now, Helga referred to traffic calming. We've got villages all over the county appealing. Indeed, when the Taoiseach came to Kilkishen earlier this year, the local community were appealing to him to the Clare County Council enabling traffic calming. Schools, speed limits at schools. The communities in North Clare pointed out to the council in February 24 that the whole of Wicklow County had adopted a 30 kph limit outside schools, and unfortunately the response was extremely poor. We had really effectively, no, we're not going to do that. And indeed, a statement to Minister Canny following Helga's meeting said, all Clare schools are now in a speed limit of 60 kph or less. They aren't. That's actually factually incorrect.
Okay, so there's quite a few, I suppose, gaps there and issues that need to be addressed. Helga, just to come back to you, I'd love to get your reaction to this. We had a listener email us to focus@clare.fm, Brendan, in relation to the situation on the roads. He says, I just want to highlight the poor state of the roads in and around North Clare. They mentions that the state of the road between Lisdoonvarna, Kilfenora and again around Lamena is so poor that drivers are more focused on avoiding potholes rather than looking on ahead to check on oncoming traffic. Once we were concerned only about potholes at the side of roads, there are now potholes actually in the centre of the roads. It's also come to my notice that safety road signs that have either been involved, damaged in an accident, are not being reinstated in their position. There's a major road sign on the road between Ennistymon and Kilshanny in the bushes for over 2 months. Now, we, the locals, take due care when approaching the junction, but what about drivers who are just touring the county? The listener, Brendan, also goes on to say he sees a road safety sign on the road in Doolan towards Lisdoonvarna, which has fallen down and is just left on the side of the ditch. He has highlighted issues with 2 of the pedestrian crossings in Lisdoonvarna. Even though he raised the issue last August, September, he feels nothing's been done. He says, are we just waiting for someone to have a serious accident and then the issue will be attended to? Sometimes I wonder why there are not more accidents on our public roads. That is quite an alarming email, but I suspect it's probably not too surprising to you, and there needs to be changes and safety measures implemented as soon as possible. But even something simple as taking a sign out of the ditch and just putting it back where it's meant to be should happen.
Absolutely, Ellen. Yeah, I mean, that email kind of hits it on the head, that I think the state of roads in County Clare is one of the worst along the Wild Atlantic Way. There's potholes everywhere. There are potholes also now in the middle of the road. There's ripped tires, blown out tires, damaged cars because people go into the ditch. They are everywhere. I hit a pothole yesterday and I'm surprised my tire didn't rip. That was on the N67 from between Ennistymon and Lisdoonvarna. This is everywhere. And if there's any rain, of course, then, you can't really see them more if you're driving at night time. So people have these issues all the time. I still travel down to Ballyvaughan every second day. I see people there regularly by the side of the road because they've hit a pothole, they've hit a rock. A lot of them are tourists. It's not a pleasant encounter to have on your holidays or on your journey. It is also not a safe encounter to have. And one thing Sean Kenny said just a couple of weeks ago in an interview with RTE is that, the kind of traffic numbers on all roads in Ireland have significantly increased. And I would add to that, in particular in County Clare, because of the Cliffs of Moher. So when you now take the poor state of the roads, the poor state of the infrastructure, signs fallen into the wayside or being completely grown over by bushes because a hedge cutter doesn't, clear the sign that needs to be done by hand. And then we have that massively increased volume of traffic. Yes, our road fatalities and serious accidents will go up. That's a no-brainer. Okay. So when will action be taken?
And speaking of action, and just to finish with you, Andy, for 2026, what are the most urgent actions needed to reverse the tragic rise in road deaths?
Well, as I say, I think we need institutional reaction, taking it seriously. Now, this safety group, we have contacted one of the councillors on it, and he says he's going to try and kick it in action despite the fact that the officials haven't convened it. But essentially, we've got a bit of a roadblock, in the official structure. So I think we've had so many discussions about this, and going back many years. I think a significant culture change and some meaningful performance targets need to be set by Chief Executive Gordon Daly for the officials and engineers whose job this is supposed to be. The new director is Carmel Kirby, so she's not an engineer, but I think she needs to take this seriously and, above all, collaborate with communities, talk to communities, because there is a terrible habit of sort of retreating behind official walls, and with councillors sometimes use the buffer between communities and officials. So I think this is about taking the government's goals seriously in terms of road safety, having pride in the county compared to other counties so that we're not last in the performance league table as opposed to better. I have some sympathy about the road maintenance. Bill Slattery on your programme on the 2nd of January referred to the poor lack of government funding. There is a funding issue, undoubtedly. However, there are basic things, as Helga's indicated, which we see every day and talk about every day, instances on different roads, things that need to be repaired and need to be addressed, which are often quite simple and quite cheap to do.
Okay, we do have to leave it there. I've no doubt that the local authority CEO and the staff you mentioned would feel they're doing their utmost to address road safety, but clearly still more needs to be done. A listener agreeing with you, Helga, on 086 1800 964, saying there absolutely needs to be signage for tourists to remind them to stay on the left. It's an easy thing to do, but still hasn't been done. We do have to leave it there. My thanks to Andy Lambert and Helga Himmelsbach for joining us on Morning Focus on this really, really important issue.